Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. So, yeah, hope everyone's doing good. I it's well, first off, it's early. It's 8:22 on a Wednesday morning. So, it's a beautiful day so far. Uh Pretty day. It's rainy. It was rainy all day yesterday, but today it's pretty nice. I think the forecast is going to be nice for a little while, so that's good. But anyway, I really been enjoying doing getting back to a relatively normal schedule around this channel. I've been doing shows fairly often, so pretty much every day. There's a few days here and there where I can't really, I can't always do a show, but I I'm always uploading videos. Usually what I end up doing is I end up like recording a video and then letting it sit for a day or two, and then I a day goes by, I'll upload it, and then I'll do another video. And then days of where I'm away from my computer and home, I will like record a couple of videos, and then when I'm back home or have the time to do it, then it's pretty easy. I can just kind of upload the videos and what have you. So yeah, I like to always talk about my band Quantum. We have a show on Friday. If you're around, uh, we're going to be playing at Hot Hill Tavern in Thomaston, which is a pretty cool venue. I'm going to be playing there with my great friends Ronnie and Halsey, who also have electronic groups. Should be fun. This is the third time that all three of us have played together, so really, really cool. And we've played together in to somewhat of this like kind of configuration before. We had for our Quantum release show, we about 2 years ago, we put out our. It was initially going to be a double album, but I decided to kind of break it up. In Dreams, I saw Chapter One, and then in Dreams, I saw Chapter Two. Originally, it was going to be a double album, but we decided, there's a lot of music on both of the albums, so we decided to kind of space it out. So about 2 years ago, we put out the first chapter, if you will, and it's about each disc is probably about 50 minutes or so of music. So about 2 years ago, we had our release show for that, and my great friend Ronnie played with us. He opened up. He did a big long set before we played, and then this past November of last year now, which is just crazy, we I released the second part. So it was really nice to have that done. I was kind of sitting on it for a while. The music had been recorded for a while, and it's putting out music these days for musicians is tricky. You have to really think of things differently as far as marketing, and then also people's habits, and what have you. But you kind of want to put out projects. You kind of want to just put stuff out. It's really hard putting out a record because it gets easier now. I mean, it's a lot easier for me to do it now. But early on, I didn't have very much experience because, and you have that feeling of like you don't want to, you're a super perfectionist and you don't want to put it out, and you have a lot of reservations, you're nervous, and you're like, well, because the thing is with a record, it's there's a level of where it's it's a final thing. Like you're not gonna it's etched in stone. It's not gonna change once it's put out. It's not like a live performance. So, and I know that's a reluctancy sometimes for you know maybe artists out there that haven't really had that experience of putting out their own music, like an album. But I think once I kind of got past that and that process, it's gotten a lot easier. And my whole thing around it has changed a lot too, where I used to spend tons and tons of time like trying to get everything really, really perfect and doing overdubs, this real painstaking process. And then in the past, we would have the material really, really ready, or I should say, actually the opposite. We would kind of create a lot of the material in the studio, so it was kind of impromptu. Some ideas were brought to the studio, but generally it wasn't. But now, what we generally do is we usually play the material a lot, like through gigs or what have you. And so we go in now and record the stuff, when it's really ready, and it saves a lot of time, obviously, like the more prepared you are. And I tend to really just do one or two takes of tracks. I know that's kind of crazy. I remember when I first sent some of the recordings to a friend of mine who also does recording. He was like, "Oh wow, like you really just kind of putting it out there. You're not really, you're not spending a lot of time doing overdubs and cleaning this and that up. It's pretty raw." But he really liked the music. But he realized that like, we're kind of just doing it pretty quickly. And that whole thing has really shifted for me. It's like it's a balance too because I really want, obviously, you're putting out your music. You want the music to be really tight, a good production. You want it to really, get the message or point across, and you want it to be hopefully a good engaging experience. And a lot of times in the past, like with other recording sessions that I've had, it's a painstaking process. Everything essentially when you're in the studio is under a microscope. So it takes a long time to get it right. And so we've changed how we've done albums, ever since the album that we put out quite a few years ago, The Stars Beneath Our Feet. That was the first album that we did where it was all the music was really, really rehearsed, and we kind of just went in and did a few takes or one or two takes of each song, and then that was it, and then we moved on. And my whole thing kind of goes back to like kind of when I was a kid now. I really love, and then also my movie tastes, really, because it's another big influence from movies, is as I love the grindhouse cinema so much. It's my favorite style. And that whole kind of vibe and aesthetic is like super raw. And I've described that whole thing as to why I love it as like it's like putting on a punk rock record. And for me it's like it's weird. I kind of don't do that real meticulous process anymore. I try to get all the work done as far as crafting the songs and getting them really tight in rehearsal before. And then most of the time that what we do is, we tighten up the songs through gigs. Usually during the summer and certain times of the year, we play a lot of gigs. So that's usually what I do as far as getting the tunes ready. And so like the influence of those films, that genre, and I like the rawness. Like for me, I don't if the track can even be a little bit sloppy or a little bit like super raw, and maybe a little too raw for some people's taste, and I totally get that. But if the track has the vibe I'm kind of going for, and it captures that feeling, that's all I'm asking for. If there's like obviously if there's blatant mistakes, and like where there's where it's very obvious that something is not right, then we redo it. But generally, if the vibe is there, I'm usually happy with it, and I can let it go and then move on to the next track. I keep things, I try to keep it really loose. It's like a combination of really, really trying to fine tune things, really, really rehearsed, but then at the same time, very, very loose. And the other thing that sounds, well, also kind of crazy, because, initially in the recording process, if you're taking classes in recording engineering, or just most people feel the opposite way. That's that usually that attitude that or the stance I have or the method I have kind of to a degree flies in the face of how we are taught to record music. But I like things when they're very, very raw, and but I love pop music, and that doesn't always lend itself to that. So it's a balance. And the other thing we used to do with Quantum is we used to typically we would play a lot of gigs during the spring or summertime, which we usually do, or sometimes we'd have winters where we would play a lot of music, and then we'd take a big chunk of time off, and I would go through the process of like starting to write new material and working on stuff. And usually, like when in my extreme downtime, when there aren't any shows or gigs, I will spend a lot of time working on the material and then writing the material, and but then when there's a show coming along, what I end up doing is I start putting together the sets for the music. So it's a whole kind of it's all got like the systematic kind of approach to it. The other thing we used to do too in our downtime as Quantum is we used to when we had a handful of gigs or a lot of gigs coming up, we would spend a lot of time rehearsing, and as a band, me and my friend Mike, and we started rehearsing every week. We would rehearse every week until those gigs, and then hopefully we would be ready. That was the process of it, and and again, this kind of flies in the face of like convention, but I basically stopped doing those kinds of rehearsals because I felt like the last year or 2 years we kind of stopped doing rehearsals because I felt like the band was starting to sound better without having that kind of practice, which sounds very weird. I still work on the material all the time, and I'm trying to always, push myself, trying to, everything's a work in progress, and I'm always working on this stuff constantly. Whether I'm like working on new material, which is always kind of coming up, and then just trying to work on older tunes and just trying to always keep it going. So I'm always working on it. But I find the less time that when we don't do those kinds of long rehearsals, at least in my experience, our gigs have been better where there feels like a freshness. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting thing. So if you're around, come on by to Hot Hill Tavern. The show starts at 7. So it should be fun. And then on Sunday, we're going to be playing at the Pride Festival in Rockland, Maine at 12:30 in the afternoon. So yeah, some fun things happening. And just a few minutes ago, I uploaded a brand new video that I recorded yesterday about one of the greatest albums of all time, especially in the world of ambient and electronic music. Uh, I did a show on Tangerine Dream Zeist, which is such an epic album. It's a double album, and I had a kind of a funny, long, weird history with that album, and then actually getting the album. So check that out if you get a chance. So, so yeah. So today's show is on a movie that I've had for a couple of years, and I've only watched it once, and I realized a couple of weeks ago that I've never talked about this movie, and I watched it the other night, and I was like, this movie fucking rules. Why haven't I watched this movie? I literally have only seen it. I didn't. I bought this movie cold. I heard a little bit about it growing up, and a few YouTube folks that I watch had talked about it, over the years, but I had never seen it, and I bought it cold probably about 3 years ago, and I watched it the other night. It's only my second time watching this movie, and then on top of that, I realized I never talked about this movie, and this movie just rules, and that is the Brotherhood of Satan. This is like an old school exploitation, satanic themed horror film, and it's it's just amazing. It's again, it's the bread and butter of my life right here. I love, when it comes to the world of exploitation movies, horror is obviously my favorite. I do cover, all kinds of different genres, but again, like I've said many, many times, you always kind of gravitate towards the certain styles and things that that you really love and that you just feel, real passionate about. And so that's the same thing for me. Like I always go back to the grindhouse cinema style because it's the greatest shit ever. And it's so fun. It's so fun. And the two sub genres, if you will, in the exploitation world that I love the most, or themed movies, are the slasher genre is my favorite, hands down. That's like, if you give me a slasher any day of the week, I'm I'm happy. I'm all set after that. It's perfection. And then after that, I really love horror films in the exploitation world that kind of deal with like real kind of sleazy, satanic themed stories. And this one's great. It's really, really awesome. It came out in 1971, and it was directed by Bernard McVitie. And I never had seen this movie. It came out in 71, and this is a really, really beautiful edition. I think this was put out by, yeah, this was put out by Arrow. Really, really awesome movie. I don't hear this movie talked about enough. This is like classic sleazy satanic horror cinema. Well, I shouldn't say it's not really. I wouldn't say it's like super sleazy, but it's really creepy and incredibly well shot. Like even for it being a really low budget, kind of a cheesy exploitation movie, it's it's very well done. Like there's a lot of really beautiful cinematography, and the imagery in this movie is haunting, particularly around this. I mean, it's essentially about these two this married couple that travels and they end up in this town, this kind of really weird, mysterious town, and the townspeople are, well, essentially a part of this like satanic cult, and they are like actively trying to kind of build a like satanic community, if you will. And there's all these scenes of where there's all these big elaborate ritual scenes that are really really great and just really haunting, beautiful set pieces. It's super cool, and there's a lot of amazing imagery. There's a lot of cool paintings that are used, like referencing the like kind of the mythology behind the devil and like seduction and sin. It's really really great, and it's if anything, like the movie isn't necessarily super gory. I think there's definitely some great gore in this movie, but it's more of a creepy film, and the atmosphere for this movie is super cool. There's there's scenes of where these children are involved at this like kind of birthday party, and it's part of this like you know this like satanic ritual, and there's like a but it's like a birthday party, and it's very surreal and very creepy, even though nothing is like overt, I guess, if you want to call it that. And all the kids are like having this birthday party, and they're eating this like red velvet cake, and it's just really haunting, and really the thing that I love about this movie the most is the atmosphere is so rich. It really is. It's really, you can kind of sink your teeth into it. Arrow, who put out the Brotherhood of Satan, is a pretty pretty popular, pretty prolific company. I do have quite a few of their movies. They definitely are pretty spot on with their releases. This is a really beautiful release, really great packaging. It's got a slip cover, beautiful Blu-ray. The transfer of this movie is awesome. I love the artwork is really awesome. It's got one disc, and there's a pretty cool little booklet in here about this movie and a bunch of their other releases. But really, really beautiful release. I got this fairly cheap, and I think bought this. Definitely got this at Bull Moose, and I got it pretty cheap. But awesome release. Definitely one of the best like satanic themed exploitation movies. Definitely, I think this movie was really influential in a lot of ways. And again, it's just got this vibe about it that it's very suspenseful, particularly around the build up towards kind of the end of the film, the climax. And the ritual scenes are really awesome. Like there's some really beautiful cinematography. The set pieces are awesome, and it's just got this real creepy, psychedelic vibe throughout it. There is some really good gore in this movie also, but really cool. There's some creepy dolls in the movie, which is always great, and but the cinematography is awesome. There's in the beginning of the scene, or the beginning of the movie, I should say, when this couple is traveling, they're like driving through these mountains, and they get this sense of, something being really off. And there's a whole like kind of long sequence of them driving, and all of these great kind of panoramic shots of the mountains and their environment, and it's, I don't know, really great, really beautiful cinematography. And again, this is definitely a real low down, low budget, cheesy exploitation movie, but the way the film is kind of constructed, and the suspense, the acting, the cast is really great, and especially the cinematography, particularly in the first couple acts of this movie. It feels like it's a bigger budgeted film than you would think it would be. They really really got some great shots. A really great cinematographer on this project. It's a beautiful looking film, and my two favorite films kind of in this genre are, well, my favorite is Satan's Blood. That's a Spanish film, and I've done a show on that. I think I've done a couple of shows. That movie is just remarkably. That movie, it's such a remarkable film, and it's so like, it's so nasty and perverse and so nasty and just it's so trash. It's so trashy, and but it's so good. It's like, that's to me is my favorite one. And there's another Spanish film, Satanico Pandemonium, which is really sleazy and really disturbing. And this film is just more like, again, the atmosphere is incredible, but it's just really creepy. And there's some good special features on here too. There's some interviews with a lot of the actors who played the kids in this movie, and it's really interesting. It's really insightful, and they're obviously much older now, and they were talking about, when they were on the set for the Brotherhood of Satan, they were like, they were little kids, and they were just totally oblivious as to like what this movie was, what it was about, and little did they know what this movie was going to be about. And it's interesting too. There's a pretty cool little video essay on kind of the history of the satanic kind of cinema that was happening in the 70s and late 60s and 70s in the exploitation world. And it really, this kind of style really exploded in the 70s. There's those other films I just mentioned, Satan's Blood and Satanic Pandemonium, are all like Spanish films. So there was a shit ton of American films coming out, but a lot of great European films. Those were both Spanish films. There was like this big kind of explosion of all kinds of these films that were coming out. I also have a few Paul Naschy films, who is one of my favorite actors in the world of exploitation, and he also Spanish, did a ton of films with these kinds of themes that are just really awesome. Big, beautiful, elaborate set pieces, and all kinds of things. The one thing that's kind of funny about this movie is like, there actually isn't, there's no actual, more or less satanic actual things really used in the ritual, like in the ritual sequences. Like, there's no like pentagrams or upside down crosses and things like that. but you have everything else. You have the candles. You have these giant, gorgeous altars. Really haunting music. Really great atmosphere. The black robes, candles, incantations, and things. All the things that we love to see. But the funny thing about it is, one like symbol that they use, that like kind of the head priest uses during the ceremonies, and it's also the same symbol that they use on their altar, is a an Egyptian cross, which is kind of baffling as to why they use that in the movie. And it's not overly used, and it's not like so you're not seeing it, and it's not so obvious, but it's in the movie, and it's a little bit off-putting. So you're kind of like, I don't know what they were thinking. Like they're using this ancient Christian, Egyptian Christian, cross, like that, more or less symbolizes the Holy Trinity, and they're using it in this like satanic kind of context. So it's a little bit funny, but it's really silly and goofy. But everything else, all the other classic trappings are there. But awesome, awesome movie, super creepy, and again, if you're into this movie, definitely for me has a vibe of Rosemary's Baby, but way more low budget and way more cheesy. Awesome movie, one of the better, one of the best movies in this awesome genre of satanic trash. So very, very cool. Highly recommend it. 1971. I mean, it kind of doesn't get any better than that. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.